Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting lightning over mountain, and I'm going to be sipping on my coffee. And if you enjoyed this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, deep yellow, fluorescent pink, purple violet, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors as well, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and then I have 2 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paints and brushes, and even the pencil will be included. So that's all there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final picture. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing an outline of our landscape. So I'm going to be using my pencil, and this is an imaginary place, so you can certainly bend, twist, and shape yours whatever way that you'd like to. But my goal is I'm going to have kind of a peak for my lightning to hit at the top of my mountain. So I'm going to have a little high spot on my mountain, and then I'm going to have some distant mountains, and then we'll have a really close to a foreground that I'm going to be outlining. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers if you want yours to be in a similar position as mine, and then I'll just connect those markers with a freestyle type of landscape. So on the left hand side, I'm going to come down visually about halfway, and then I'm going to come about 1 inch below that. That'll be my first marker on the left hand side. Then I'm going to come almost about halfway between that marker and the bottom of my canvas and make myself another marker somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to come down till maybe I have about 1 inch left over on the bottom of my canvas and give myself a third marker there. And then on the right hand side, so I can switch this up a little bit, if I come straight over from this top marker over here, I'm going to come down from that maybe about 1 inch, give myself a marker in through there. Then these 2 markers, they could be pretty similar. We're going to give lumpy, bumpy kind of hills back there. So I'm going to come maybe about 2 inches below here, and then maybe split the difference between here and here. So just a little difference from one side to the next will force you to make these hills and stuff on an uneven type of basis, which will make them look really nice and natural. So you could start at the bottom or at the top. I think I'm actually going to start at the top just to give myself my top line. I'm going to have the peak of my hill or my distant mountain somewhere in through here. So if this is about halfway in my canvas left to right, and this is about halfway top to bottom, I'm going to come over to the left maybe about 2 inches and down maybe about 1/2 inch, and then I'm just going to kind of give myself what'll be the peak to my distant mountain, something like that. And then I'm just going to, from these 2 points, kind of ripple it down into my markers that I already have created. So I'm going to do something like this, and maybe this dips down past here and maybe back up. And of course yours does not have to look exactly as mine. Over on this side, maybe I've got this kind of dipping down a little bit here. Maybe we come down and do another little bump up of sorts. Maybe there's another little tiny hill in through here, and then maybe we just kind of roll it off into the distance. So that's going to be mine. Maybe this could be a little bit lower. I want this to really look like it's the kind of star of this show. So I'm going to just drop this down a little bit. That's the beauty of pencils. You can do whatever you want, but I wanted this one to definitely look a little bit taller. So just drop that down a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a series of distant hills, but in order for me to do that, it's tough to just kind of float them off in the distance. So I'm going to do these two first, and then I'm going to do a bunch of like portions of hills in the distance. So I'm going to take this marker and meet it to this one with another kind of fun, just carefree style of, they could be tree toppers, they could be just rolling hills, whatever is visually appealing to you. Just have fun with it. You don't have to make it exactly as mine. You can certainly make yours in whatever kind of freestyle as you want. And then this bottom one as well, I'm going to just kind of give myself some lumps and bumps. This is going to be kind of my foreground type of hill where I'll have more in focus type of foliage and things of that nature. So I'm just kind of starting it off, giving myself, again, just a freestyle type of appearance in through here, letting my pencil kind of do what it wants to get those in there. And then in through this top section, this is going to be really just hills that are off in the distance. So maybe I kind of utilize one of these little peaks over here and give myself the appearance of a hilltop in through there. Maybe I have one kind of in the distance floating here. Maybe I've got another one down in through here. So these are just going to be the dips and valleys off in the distance that are going to be nice and freestyle. But I just kind of sometimes like to give myself an idea of where I want them, so that way as I am painting it in, I can give some dark spots and light spots and kind of have a roadmap of sorts in my head. And that is all I'm going to be doing for my outline of my landscape. So we're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you get this done, you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to be painting the first layer of my sky. I'm using my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using black, white, purple, and pink. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a real dark, dreary, like plum type of color. I'm going to have it darker at the top, and I'm going to fade it down to a little bit lighter as it's meeting my mountains. So I have magically pre-mixed my color so you can see where I'm headed, and I'll show you how I got there. So this is my color that I have pre-mixed. So I'm going to thin it out here so you can kind of see what the shade is. So what I did was I took my purple, a good amount of purple, and a good amount of pink, mixed them together. So it turns out to be like a really deep, vibrant purple. So it's not on the bluer side. The pink turns it more of like a magenta type of color. And then once I've got it somewhere in that vicinity, then I'm going to start adding a little bit of black to it. So the black is going to turn it much darker, and I will also bring a little white into it. So what I'm in essence doing is adding a dark gray to that purpley mixture that I made. So I'm adding a touch of white now, and I don't want it to go all the way black because I know that I am going to be doing some other dramatic stuff on my sky, so I want to make sure that I have it lighter than black. I do know that this will get a little bit darker as it dries. This is looking pretty good for me. That's looking in a similar colored palette to me, so I'm just going to mix these together. So this is in essence just going to give me that stormy type of sky. We're going to add all kinds of information on top of it later, so I'm not really terribly concerned if I have a perfect color right yet, but something in this nice dark purpley plum vicinity will get me going. And I'm just going to apply it in a left to right type of brush stroke. I'm not even going to be terribly concerned if I have perfect coverage at this point, because like I said, we're going to be adding a lot more information to our sky. This is just going to act as our base coat, and I'm going to go left to right with just this same color for the majority of the way. And then when I get down towards my horizon, or where my sky is going to meet my hills, I will add a touch of white to the equation so it gets a little bit lighter as it's going to be touching those mountain edges. So again, right now I'm still just using my dark plummy purple grayish type of a color. I don't know if there's a distinct name for this color. We're just going to call it a stormy sky type of a color. I'm bringing it right to my mountains, and you can bump right into them. Those lines were just intended to be a loose guide for you. And then once I get all the way down to the bottom, you can see I'm bringing it right to my pencil mark. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, without washing my brush, I'm picking up a little bit of white paint, and I'm going to mix it in at that bottom edge where it is meeting my mountains. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this coat on your sky, and again, don't be terribly concerned if it's perfect or not. We're just going for something that's going to provide us with a nice deep stormy type of background to our sky. And then you can just wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to be painting my distant hills and mountains. So this is going to be this entire section except for this the bottom section that you created. So these are going to be the distant hills and mountains. I want them to look like there's maybe clouds or fog or mist settling into the valleys, and I want them to look dark and dreary. However, I don't want them to necessarily go all the way black, because I'm going to be utilizing this front hill or this foreground as my black silhouetted area. So if I turn too much of this back area black, this front area won't stand out as much. So the colors that I'm going to be using, I'll be using my sky color. I'll also be using black and white, and I'm just going to do varying tones of gray, my dreary purpley color, maybe some lighter gray, just varying tones of it, so that way it'll make it look like it's got lots of depth and dimension. So I'm most likely going to start at the top and work my way down to the bottom, but I'm sure I will go back and forth to get to fiddle with it as I go along, and I'll talk you through it. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to pick up some of my sky color, a little bit of black, and a little bit of white. And you can even wipe it off on your palette to just have kind of see what you're getting yourself into. I want it to look a little bit different than my sky, especially up at the edges, so I'm going to go for it to be a little bit darker. So that's where my black is going to come into play. So just making sure that I have enough black on my brush, but not all the way so it turns all the way black. So I'm going to start up in through here, and you can see that it is a little bit darker in tone than my sky. I can certainly, as this process goes, as we go through the painting, I can certainly adjust the tonal value to make it lighter or darker. We're going to be doing more work on our sky, which will allow for this to pop out a little bit more. But right now I'm just going to concentrate on having it pretty darn dark up at the top, but again, not totally going into a full-on black type of color. I'm going to bring this in over up in through here. And as I do this, I'm going to most likely just be using this kind of rubbing, scrubbing type of scumbling brush stroke. But you might find that you want to use more of of a left to right or a circular type of motion. This to me is a nice easy way for me to control what's happening on the canvas and to not use too much paint as I go through the process. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white on my brush to get the bottoms of these hills to be a little bit lighter as they're transitioning into the next one. So I did them darker at the top, and I'm bringing them a little bit lighter as they get down towards the valley area. And you can utilize, I just picked up some of the sky color. You can pick up a little bit of white. I'm not going to be washing my brush. I'm just going to be blending the colors on my canvas. So this is going to provide me with a really nice natural type of look to this. Every time I want it a little bit darker, like I want to make sure that I got the top of this one a little bit darker, I just picked up a tiny bit more black on my brush. As I'm working my way down the scenery, I just keep on picking up, like I just picked up more of my sky color to work this hill in through here. I'll probably pick up a little bit of white in a second just to make sure that I get that misty, foggy look. So not washing my brush, picking up a little bit of white to get the bottom of this hill to turn into a lighter shade, working my way right into the top of that of the next hill. And that's just my thought process throughout this whole mountainscape, is to get each hill a little bit darker at the top and then lighter as it goes down into that valley. And again, I'm just kind of alternating the black, white, and the sky color. And you don't have to have each hill distinctly going all the way across. Like this fog can kind of roll into the bottom of this hill. So just know it's a landscape. Lots of different stuff can happen when you've got this fogginess occurring in it. So don't feel like yours has to look exactly as mine. You can make your hills all look like they're one solid rolling hill. It can be one continual cloud. It can be more pointy hills, like they're skiing type of hills. You can certainly make them into whatever type of topography and landscape that you want. And I'm just kind of bringing this over in through here. And again, I'm just alternating those three colors so I can have a nice variety of lights and darks and moodiness throughout this, but I'm trying to keep it on the softer, duller side. I'm not bringing in any vibrant colors, just kind of letting the darkness happen and giving myself this variety of darker tops, and then they just kind of roll into the lightness below, which to me represents like a little bit of a fogginess. And if I feel like I'm going too purple or, you know, too gray, I can just kind of adjust it on the fly with a little bit more white or a little bit more of the sky color, whatever works for you. I've got this last big one to go down in through here. So again, just kind of picking up some of my black, my sky color, and maybe a touch of white. Because again, I don't want it to go all the way black. So I'm really conscious about not going too dark on these tips. I mean, I am going pretty dark, but I don't want to go all the way black. So if I feel like I am going all the way black, I definitely just pick up a tiny bit more white onto my brush and or my sky color and just kind of adjust it on the fly. So that way I can ensure that I've got the contrast when I go to do this front hill or the foreground. So I'm just kind of finishing up here, making sure that everything just kind of works together. And if you get done this step and you step away and you're like, it's just not, I'm not seeing as much definition in the hills that I want to, just let it dry and go over it with a second coat. Sometimes kind of letting it sit and dry and getting your focus on it and seeing what you really want and what you know worked for you and what didn't work for you. that can help you to advance it into something that is pleasing to your eye. And again, this is just a stormy landscape, so it does not have to be anything specific. I'm giving mine the impression that there's a lot of fog and mist going by, and then as I tidy up here and as I've got all of my areas in place, I'll just kind of put my head back, look at it for a minute, see if there's any little adjusting that I want to do, and then I will be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So go ahead, fiddle with it as much as you want. Once you've got it into the way that you want, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the foreground land. So I'm going to be using both my small and my large brush, but I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step, that you want to make sure that your mountain range is pretty dry. It doesn't have to be 100% dry because we're using black, and black usually overpowers most colors, but just in case you had some light gray or something that you don't want to bump into too much. So just make sure that's dry, so you can take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my small brush to make maybe some long pieces of grass and a tree with some branches and stuff coming out with the trunk and the branches, and then I'll use my big brush to color in the whole bottom and give myself a nice kind of uneven edge with some shrubs and some leaves and stuff over on the left hand side. So this is going to look like just a silhouette, so that's why I'm using just black paint. So I've got my small brush. I'm going to start with my small brush and do maybe some pieces of long wild grass coming out of this piece of land over in through here, and you can really have a ton of fun with giving this whatever type of silhouette you want. Maybe you even have a person or something just standing and looking off at the beautiful storm that's happening over the hillside or over the mountain. So feel free to make this into whatever you want. I've got big pieces of grass and little pieces of grass. I'm gonna have a small kind of tree in this area, so I think I'm gonna have maybe it's almost like, I don't know, a bush kind of tree thing. You can have yours in whatever way you want. I'm going to have a couple of long branches coming over here, and then I'm just utilizing the narrow kind of branches and stuff, so I have some dimension to this structure that I'm putting on here with a couple of little branches maybe sticking out here and there. So have fun with that. And once you've got, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just something that's going to give me a little bit more structure to the silhouette that I'm doing. I'm going to do some little wild pieces of grass coming up off of the top of this area in through here, so I don't have just a flat line happening, and I'll put some leaves and stuff on top of these. And once I've got this wild grass stuff, I'm going to pick up my big brush and I'm going to paint the entire bottom area with just black paint. So I'm not doing any special brush stroke because it's black, so it's going to end up being a solid color anyways. I'm not introducing any other colors into this area. And then once I get up to the edge where it's meeting the hills, this is when I'm going to start utilizing the tip of my brush and giving myself a really uneven appearance to the edge. So this is going to allow it to look nice and natural. So I'm not going for a straight across look. I'm not going for a look that the landscaper perhaps came and trimmed it up. I'm looking for a nice wild, we're just looking over the edge of a mountain hillside type of landscape. So I'm letting Mother Nature take over and use her wild side with some rough edges, and I'm bringing it all the way up and making sure my entire canvas is covered at this point. Maybe I'll have a couple of little, you can even use the corner of this brush to bring up a couple of extra long pieces of shrubs if you want to. And then I'm going to put some leaves in that little tree area over here that I have created. Maybe we'll get some little stuff coming up in through here as well. Just feel it. Just make it into whatever is pleasing to your eye. I'm going to use black paint with just the tip of my brush to give myself the silhouette of some brush or leaves within this bush or whatever we want to assume that this is. Bring some up in through here. And again, this is just intended to look like the silhouette. So I'm going to leave little peekaboo spots so you can see some of the hills behind it. You don't have to cover up all these branches. Just leaving some little pieces here and there is going to make it look nice and natural. You don't even have to bring this all the way down to the bottom, but you, again, just do whatever is visually appealing to you. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your ground all nice and taken care of, maybe I'll put a little bit down in through here too. Once you've got this all nice and fully rendered as much as you want it to, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're doing the second layer of our sky. So I'm going to call this the glow in the sky. So this is going to be all the information we would see because the lightning is lighting it up. So we're going to see a glow behind the rain cloud, which is where the lightning is going to be coming out. We'll also see a glow behind the lightning, and perhaps the rain that's coming down in the sky might be a little lit up as well. So we're just going to call this the glow. It might end up looking like clouds and stuff like that, but by the time we put the lightning on and the big cloud on, this will definitely look like the glow and some rain and stuff. So I'm using my big brush. The colors that I'm going to be using, I'm going to use my sky color, so that plum color. I'll be using pink, I'll be using white, and if I feel I need to, maybe I'll go into some of my purple or my black, but it's going to predominantly be my sky color, pink and white. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to kind of plan it out in my head where I want my lightning to come down and how it's going to kind of work its way out. So I'm having my big rain cloud is going to be here, but I want glow underneath it or behind it. And my lightning is going to be hitting my hill in through here. And I want it to kind of come in a diagonal type of way. So I'm going to have a large bright spot a little bit to the left of the center of my canvas in through here. That's going to be the back behind my big cloud. I'm going to have it pretty light. My glow is going to be pretty light coming down in through this area, and then it will dissipate and get darker and darker the farther away from here that it goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with pink paint on my brush without washing or without using any other color. The pink is very translucent, and this can kind of give me a roadmap of where I want this extra bright area to go, and I can start to get the glow to happen around it as well. So I've got pink paint on my brush. I'm going to start up in through here, and I'm just going to be using that rubbing, scrubbing type of technique. I know that I want it to come down kind of in a diagonal type of way down in through here, and I'm just kind of rubbing it out, bringing it all the way down to my hill, maybe bringing it out the sides a little bit in through here and here, and I'm really just kind of rubbing it until it's almost dry, so that way I have that luminescent appearance to work from behind. I'm going to pick up some more pink paint because I want this to kind of travel out a little farther, so I just picked up a little bit more so I can get it to extend a little bit further. And again, I know that it's translucent, so as it dries on top of this darker area, it will get darker as it's drying. So I just want to kind of put a little bit of this pink on the left and the right side of my brightest area, which will be down in the middle. I'm just kind of rubbing it out in through here. Now what I'm going to do, without washing my brush, I'm picking up a little bit of my sky color and a touch of white. So the trick here is you do not want any of this to go all the way white, because the only white thing that we're going to need in the painting is the lightning, the center stripe. So when you're making any of these other light areas, just be careful not to go all the way white. So whenever I am doing a lighter area, I can have white on my brush, but I also want to have something else on there. So right now I have my dirty brush that has some pink on it. Then I have my sky color and a little white. I'm going to start up in my glow that's going to be behind my cloud. So I am going to be using this circular type of motion. I'm going to be pulling it out pretty darn far over here on the right hand side, and I'm just going to give it some soft edges. So I'm really utilizing the firmness of this bristle brush to allow me to get these soft edges to it. And I'm bringing it all the way over in through here. Not a lot of paint on my brush at this point, just kind of getting this lighter area to happen. Gonna pick up that same combination, which is purple, or my plum plus white, and I'm going to start to work on this center area in through here. So purple plus, or plum plus my white. And again, I don't want to overdo any area to make it, to get rid of all of that pink or anything like that. I'm just kind of working my way to get a lighter region. I know I want it pretty darn light down here as it hits the mountain as well. So I'm going to utilize some of that lightness that I have on my brush to illuminate the bottom portion of that, and then maybe just kind of get it to intermingle with that pink area that I had. I might put a little bit more pink on my brush in a second just to get this glow to be really nice and luminescent around where we're going to have the lightning. Just kind of working this out, making sure that it's got these soft edges to it. And you can utilize a little bit of water on your brush if you wanted to, but sometimes for me, when I'm building in these layers upon layers all at once, I don't necessarily like using too much water, because that will make my paint kind of lift right off of my canvas. I will maybe when I'm doing the rain, but as I'm building these lighter kind of areas like this, I want it to kind of dry on the fly and understand what I'm doing. So that water sometimes will lift it off of the canvas when it's too fresh like this. I'm picking up a little bit more pink paint on my brush because I want some of this in the center to have a little bit more of that luminescent type of appearance to it. So just adding a bit more pink on top of that. And you can get yours to be as pink as you want. Maybe you bring in some of your purple kind of color if you want to. I'm just kind of enjoying this appearance of the pink to me. I see it when I see lightning. I see pinks and purples and stuff. So I just kind of roll with it. So right now what I'm going to do, while this is kind of settling for a minute, I'll probably make it a little bit brighter in certain areas in a minute, but I want it to kind of settle. I'm going to put my sky color and my dirty brush and a teeny tiny bit of white paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the illusion of maybe some rain coming down. So it's mostly my sky color, and I can just kind of take it and lightly kind of go in this diagonal type of direction. And I don't want it to be too evident. I really am just looking for it to be a subtle type of appearance that's happening. So if you do get it to go too light on you, you just wash your brush and bring back some of your sky color. So as you're going through this process, you'll be able to detect as it's drying. It's going to dry a little bit darker than it is when it's wet anyways, but you'll be able to detect visually as you're going through this process if you want it to be any lighter or darker as you're going through the process. I think I'm going to put a little bit more in through here because I'm seeing some streaks that I'm not enjoying, so just adding a little bit more in through here. And again, you can just adjust it to whatever is comfortable for you. If you want, you can bring some of those darker tones from the sky down into your lighter area, and that's going to make it look like you've got some rain going in front of that. So it's an illusion that's really fun to create, and you can certainly come in through this direction and give it a little bit more of an appearance. I think I'm going to, at this point, this is looking pretty good to me, I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my pink. I kind of want more pink in my sky over in this direction, so I just picked up a little bit more pink just to kind of get that to be a little bit more evident. And then I think I'm going to pick up some white and pink on my dirty brush. So white and pink, so I can get, again, this center area to be a little bit more vibrant. So a little bit of white and pink on my brush is going to give me that lightness. And again, not going all the way white. So that's where that pink and my dirty brush are going to control me and allow me to stay a little bit darker than white. So that's again kind of the trick here, is you don't want to go all the way white. And again, if you do, and you know, you can always bring back some of that background sky color. That's not a problem. I'm going to bring a little bit more lightness down into the bottom of here. So again, just white and pink, and you can certainly, again, bring this as light as you want. And if the pink isn't working for you, you can always use purple or a little bit of blue or something else that is speaking to you. I'm going to, while I have this lightness on my brush, I'm going to put a little tiny tips of it on the top or at the horizon, back behind some of these hills. You could actually, I think I'm going to switch to my small brush. Taking my small brush, I think I want some little bits of highlights at the top or behind those hills. So maybe a little white, pink, and my background color, just to kind of put a little glowy edge on some of the tips of these hills, which will tell the viewer that the lightning is just kind of illuminating those little tips in through there. Not a necessary type of step, but I just was looking at it and it was speaking to me. So when it speaks to me, I just have to go with it. So you might find the same thing is true when you're painting. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your glow on here, you can wash and dry your big brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the storm cloud. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black and white. So how I'm going to do this, or how I'm going to approach it, is I want it in front of my glowy area up here, but I don't want it to cover the whole thing. So I'm going to have it coming over almost to the edge of here. I'll have some of this lightness showing above it, a lot of it showing below it. So it's just going to kind of stretch in between here and maybe disappear off the canvas in the top right. So this is one of those steps that you do not need or want to have a ton of paint on your brush. I'm going to start with black and a teeny touch of white paint. I don't want a lot of white because I really want this to look like a dark, dark, stormy cloud. And if I bring it too gray or too light, it might be confused with this front or with the glow that we have. This storm cloud is in essence almost in the silhouette, the way that we would be looking at. So mostly black with a little bit of white. You can even, for safety precautions, safety reasons, tap it on your paper towel. I'm going to be utilizing this scrubbing type of technique. Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit in through there. I'm going to give it these soft edges so it doesn't look too uniform, and I'm just going to kind of bring it over in this direction. I will finesse it a little bit more once I have it on here, but right now just kind of getting it in place. Maybe this comes down a little bit further in through here, and just have fun with it. If you do something that you're like, oh, that wasn't what I had intended, then that's okay. You can always just paint over it and make little corrections here and there. I'm going to reload with a little bit more of my black paint just so I can travel all the way across here in the way that I want. So something like this, and you can see I'm leaving a lot of that lightness underneath it. Maybe bringing a little bit of the darkness up in through here, just so it doesn't look like it's one straight line. I'm going to bring some darkness up and cross over some of that glowy part that we had. And now I'm going to stick a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush, just so I can get these little illusions of maybe a little tiny bit of puffiness in through those clouds in a couple of different places, but again, not totally necessary. Putting a touch more black on my brush, and then I just kind of keep fiddling with it until I feel like it looks pretty natural to me. I'm going to have some some lightning kind of coming out of here as well as this part in through here. So I'm just kind of getting my edges to be soft but still looking like it's a cloud. So you can certainly, I'm having my edges soft. You can have yours more distinct if you want to, just kind of playing with it a little bit. And then once you've got your cloud as cloudy as you want it, we are going to be switching to our small brush for the next step. So again, this is one of those, maybe you put it on, step back, look at it for a minute. If you want to do any little tweaks and changes to it, feel free to do so. Maybe a little lightness up at the top of this one. Maybe it's getting lit up by that light behind it. And then I will put my big brush away, take out my small brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting ourselves some lightning. So I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are white, yellow, my sky color, probably some pink as well. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to kind of initially plan it out in my head, and then we're going to build it in a strategic way. So I know that I want my biggest lightning bolt to be coming out of this brightest area of my sky, and it's going to be hitting the top of this mountain somewhere. This will be my widest and my brightest lightning bolt. I'll have lots of little branch type electricity coming out of that main volt, and then I'll have another couple coming out of this cloud up in through here and maybe splaying out to the side. So earlier I said that the whitest thing that we wanted was going to be the lightning bolt. And for me, the whitest and the brightest lightning bolt is going to be that center one. So I'm not going to need to use 100% white on all of my lightning. If I do, it's not going to look as natural. It's going to, now lightning will actually get a little bit darker the farther away from the main volt it goes. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of build my lightning from the dark to the light, leaving my brightest white to be used at the very end. And I'll be using yellow also as a bit of an illuminating type of color within my lightning bolts. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to make myself an area where I want the biggest one to come down. I'll put that in place with a darker color than white, and then we'll start building off of that. So I'm actually going to take some of my white and put a little bit of yellow into it. So I'm making myself a pale yellow color in order for this initial lightning bolt to not be 100% white, so I can work my way to the brightest part of it. And when I'm doing these lightning bolt marks, I will most of the time have dipped my brush in my water to put a little bit of fluidity onto my brush so I can get nice long continual brush strokes. Or you can thin out your paint on your palette, whatever works best for you. So when I bring them out, when I bring the lightning bolts out of the cloud, I'm going to bring it a little bit away from the cloud, so it's as if it's emerging from the brightness. You can have it touch the cloud, but I think if you put it a little bit away, it makes it look a little bit more natural. And I will have long zigzaggy type of lines. So I'm going to start this one up in through here, and then I'm going to kind of go to the right. I'll bring it back over to the left. I'm going to have it kind of coming down in this main area down in through here, just reloading my brush with my mixture. I'm going to have this bolt pretty darn wide as it comes down towards my land in through here, and then it's going to just kind of strike it in through there. I'm going to give a little bit of softness on some of these edges. I do know that I'm going to be putting that bright white down the center in a little bit. So by softening up these edges, I just put a little bit extra yellow on my brush. By softening up these edges, they will in essence kind of look like they too are glowing. So this is in essence kind of the concentrated glow of the main lightning bolt. So I'm just kind of bringing it out and softening up these edges a little bit with a little tiny bit of water on my brush. So that way it almost gives it that little bit of a cloudiness or a glow on the whatever's next to it in the atmosphere. So something like that. And again, it's not 100% white. Now what I'm going to do is that's going to be my main kind of lightning bolt itself. Now what I'm going to do, I can still utilize that light yellow color with a little bit of water to get these other ones in place. However, the further away I go from this main lightning bolt, I'm going to make it darker and darker. So I will, as I go through this process and go farther and further away, I'm going to be utilizing some of my sky color as well as some pink. So as I go farther away, what I'll do, I just picked up a little bit of water, is I will start picking up these other colors with my light yellow. So it'll be light yellow, pink, and my background color plus water is going to give me these other lightning bolts in a little bit darker of a shade. So I've got my main one in through here. I've got that color combination on my brush. I'm going to give myself another kind of firm one coming down in through here. I'm going to have many different bolts coming out of my main area, but again, as I come further away, I'm going to have a couple coming out of this cloud in through here. The water on my brush allows me to have very thin translucent type of forks within these lightning bolts. As I come out further on the right hand side, I again am still using that color combination of my sky color plus pink. I will, after I get them all in place, I will be adding a little bright highlight to these lightning bolts, but right now I'm just kind of getting them in place with this darker kind of version of the light color. I'm going to have some kind of coming down in through here, and this lightning can be whatever direction you want it. There is no kind of real rules. I guess it just kind of all connects to one another, I think. I'm not a lightning expert, but I do know when I'm looking at lightning and it seems to, the energy of it seems to, a lot of it connects in a main branch, and then they have all these little offshooting pieces. So I'm using a lot of skinny wiggle lines in my head. I'm thinking, oh, these kind of look like branches. So I'm giving it that energetic branch kind of look to it. You can certainly, like I said, have yours going in whatever direction you want. As I'm doing this, I don't press hard with my brush. I'm really just kind of using the little tip to it, but because I have that water on my brush, it's allowing me to get these little skinny pieces throughout it. And I'm trying to keep it pretty chaotic, allowing for the energy of the lightning to just kind of expand on its own and come out of these little fork areas of the lightning itself. So you can, you know, have yours in a similar formation as mine, or you can make yours into whatever way that you would like. Again, I will be adding a little bit more highlight to them in a bit, but right now I'm just kind of giving myself this roadmap of sorts where I want them. This is looking pretty good to me over on this right side. I'll start adding some on the left side in a minute, but I want a couple more really skinny ones here. And as I go towards the ends of these lightning, the energy of them, the bolts, that's where I'm getting it to be really skinny. So I lift off the pressure on my brush, and I'm really just using an itty bitty bit of paint. And again, that water really helps, or you could use like a liquid medium that helps to give me the fluidity that I'm looking for and this uneven kind of translucency to the paint as I go through this process, and it'll take on the colors that are behind it because of the water that you're using or the liquid medium that you're using in it. So I'm going to get a whole bunch on this left-hand side too. So I'm just going to kind of trail this off in through this direction. And again, just making sure that I'm a little bit darker than that center area itself. You can have yours being as energetic as you want, having them come up and down and over and out, and just have a bunch of directions involved with them. Make it look whatever kind of way is looking natural to you. I'm going to have some coming off this main branch here. Main branch, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but the main area of my lightning bolt. But first I'm going to have some coming off in through here. And a lot of times, I'm using my hand as a stopping mechanism, so my brush doesn't go too far into my canvas. That allows me to, again, another safety precaution, so I don't have really thick lines. So my hand prevents me from allowing my brush to push too hard into my canvas. So that is just one of my little tricks that I use. And when I go to do the ones coming off of this main section in through here, I'm just kind of letting them have their energy and let them kind of splay out as much as they want to. I'll have some coming in through here. And again, because I'm not using white yet, this is all going to make my white area that I add later look the brightest. So I'm going to bring a couple out in through here. Maybe we've got some coming off in through here, and I can make them maybe a little bit wider as I'm nearing this bottom area as it's coming right towards the mountaintop. And again, you can have fun with yours. Maybe yours is going to be spreading out over the entire mountain range. You can make yours into whatever kind of energetic force that you would like. So now that I've got them pretty well identified as to where I want them to go, of course, it's one of those hard steps to stop, because once you start making lightning, it's really fun. So if you can stop, what I would do next is I'm going to start to put little light sparks throughout these other areas. But again, I don't want to go all the way white. So this time I'm going to be using that light yellow as my bright color in the distant one. So I just have a little bit of that light yellow on my brush, and I'm just going to add little tiny sparks here and there of that brighter tone. So again, this adds just a little more energy to it. It's going to add a little bit more luminescent value to it. So I'm not going to overdo it. And again, I don't want it to be totally white. So I'm using that light yellow as my brighter color to be had in here. And I suppose you could use a little bit of the pink as well, but I'm using the light yellow as my luminescent highlight throughout these distant pieces of the lightning. And I'm not overdoing it, just kind of adding little bits here and there, so I have a multi-toned formation within the other lightning. And now I'm going to go in for my bright white in through here. So when you're doing this, if you feel that you wanted to amp up any of the highlights next to it, you could certainly do that with maybe a little bit of extra pink on your brush. I just stuck a little bit of extra pink on my brush. If you wanted that little extra bit of highlight down at the bottom, or if I wanted a little bit of extra up at the top, you can use pink, yellow, white, whatever works for you to get that extra bit of energy around the very bright lightning bolt that you're going to be putting. And just kind of adding a little bit of extra brightness in through here. I know that that's going to be my brightest area, so I'll just kind of add that extra bit of brightness. So now what I'm doing, I'm cleaning my brush, washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to pick up just white. So this will be my brightest of my bright, and I want it to be captured in the center of this one. So I do have a little bit of darkness, or a darker shade of light around the edges. So when I go to do this white, I'm not going to bring it all the way to the edges. I'll bring it kind of in a little bit. So I'm going to start up at the top Going to put a little bit in through here, and as I'm going down this lightning bolt, I'm keeping in mind I don't want to do the whole thing. I'm just going to be, maybe this is where I accentuate the wiggle in the bolt itself, and I'm just bringing it down that center area. Maybe it comes out in some of these side little bolts a little bit, just to make it look like it's connected. And then as it comes down this center area, this is where I'm going to get it to be the brightest, wiggling my brush a little bit just to provide that extra bit of brightness. And if when you get done this, if you say, oh, it's just not bright enough, that probably means that you don't have enough contrast with the colors next to it. And if you want to have actually light up the ground below it, you can add a little bit of extra lightness. So if there's not enough contrast, if your pink isn't dark enough, or your background isn't dark enough, or the edges aren't dark enough, they will not allow that center lightning bolt to be the brightest. So you can always add contrast. So if I wanted this to look a little bit, the brightest of the bright to look even brighter, I just put a little bit of yellow and pink on my brush, and I can add these other tones right next to the brightest of the bright, and that will make that part pop out even more. So those are little tricks that you can utilize to get that white part to stand out even more. You can put a little bit of that light yellow, add more little light yellow kind of bolts along the side, and again, that will help that center one to stick out even more. And then you just fiddle with it until you feel that you've got enough energy within your bolt. And once you do, we have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with this brush. So if you can ever stop yours, then you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I normally sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I think I'm going to go for just a gray color. So a black and white, maybe some of my background color, something on top of my foreground in through here. So you can certainly sign yours however you want. I like to use my initials, but you could certainly use your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever is your identifying mark is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very cool stormy landscape, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.